Claudia Claudini and Code Cabral, signing in to you live from the NN News Network, where today we'll talk about regional and trans-regional trade from the time period of 600 to 1450 CE. Let's start off with our summary of our key concepts. Although Afro-Eurasia and the Americas remained separate from one another, this era witnessed a deepening and widening of old and new networks of human interaction within and across regions. The results were unprecedented concentrations of wealth and intensification of cross-cultural exchanges. Innovations in transportation, state policies, and mercantile practices contributed to the expansion and development of commercial networks, which in turn served as conduits for cultural, technological, and biological diffusion within and between various societies. Pastoral or nomadic groups played a key role in creating and sustaining these networks, expanding networks, and fostering greater interregional borrowing, while at the same time sustaining regional diversity. Okay, you don't have to get any of that because I'll explain to you in the next few minutes. Okay, instead of staying around and telling you guys what you guys should know, we went around and asked other Suncoast students and teachers what they know. Hey guys, can you tell me which dynasty did foot binding begin in?
The late Tang Empire?
Correct. Guys, tell me what a kipu is.
It's like the little, the knotty thingy. What is
Hey
it?
there, could you tell me where the Bedouin tribes were located?
I have no idea.
Hey you guys, can you tell me where the Hagia Sophia was? Or is? Wait, what? Can you tell me where the Songhai Empire was located?
Africa.
Fabulous. Okay, let's get down to business. We have our four major trade routes: the Silk Road, Mediterranean, Trans-Saharan, and Indian Ocean trade. The Silk Road trade had nomads to be the intermediaries to bring products back and forth. They brought religion and culture along with them. The textiles, silk, and porcelain were traded around here, but it's not limited to that. We have a revival in the Silk Road trade after the Dark Ages, once the Mongols come in to bring their Pax Mongolica and make everybody happy so they want to trade. The Mediterranean sea trade was facilitated by trading families such as the Medici family in Italy, and also we have it reviving after the Dark Ages with the coming of the Renaissance. This trade was between the Europeans and the North Africans. From North Africa, the people would bring the trading goods into Africa, past the Saharan Desert, and this would be called the Sub-Saharan trade. Now we have Mali, Ghana, all those wonderful places trading right now. They have gold, salt, and ivory, which everybody always loves in Africa, and also other places, so that's why they would be trading out of Africa through the Silk Road, out of the Mediterranean Sea, and into the Indian Ocean. This trans-Saharan trade was made possible by camels introduced in 300 by the Arabians. Okay, we have our Indian Ocean trade, which includes Southern Asia, Africa, and even the Europeans who were introduced to it by the Crusades, which made them aware of it, and also Vasco da Gama and Diaz showed Europeans that it was possible to get into this region by sea. Also, Zheng He from China made his way around to Europe and other places in Africa. The Europeans heard about it, like, what? Let's go trade. Okay, we have our Indian Ocean trade, which includes Southern Asia, Africa, and even the Europeans who were introduced to it by the Crusades, which made them aware of it, and also Vasco da Gama and Diaz showed Europeans that it was possible to get into this region by sea. Also, Zheng He from China made his way around to Europe and other places in Africa. The Europeans heard about it, like, what? Let's go trade. Carry on with our key concepts. We have trade cities developing at this time, such as Constantinople, Timbuktu, Swahili city-states, Calicut, Baghdad, Malacca, Venice, and in the Americas we have Tenochtitlan and Cahokia. Constantinople was a major connection of trade. It passed down from the Romans to the Byzantine to the Ottomans, which then called it Istanbul. We have Timbuktu, which is a major gold center for Mali. Ibn Battuta, he made his Hajj to Mecca, and then people were aware of his great wealth. They're like, hey, I want some of this wealth. They go to Timbuktu, they want Timbuktu. It has so much gold. They fight for Timbuktu, and Mali falls. Swahili city-states was major ports along the eastern coast of Africa. And yeah, that was our Indian Ocean. Okay, more key concept. We have new trade organizations and infrastructure in many of these civilizations to help facilitate trade. New organizations, which would be the Hanseatic League, or infrastructure, which would be the Grand Canal in China. Okay, more key concepts. We have the old peoples and the new peoples, and they are expanding, and this means more trade and more communication. Okay, long distance trade means you need an understanding of where you're trading, such as the Vikings using their longboats to help get from place to place, or the Mongols using their horses to go through the steepies. You also have to know the migrations at this time and their impacts, such as the Bantu peoples going through Africa, spreading their languages. That's why all the African languages have Bantu dialect, and also spreading iron throughout this region. And yeah, there you go. You learn one section of this. That's enough of me talking, so now off the page with more info on Unit 3.
Hello, I'm Paige Pepper, reporting to you the breaking news and key concepts you need to know. How did trade networks as a whole develop in the post-classical era? Well, cross-cultural exchanges were fostered by the intensification of existing or the creation of new networks of trade and communication. Islam into Afro-Eurasia because of military expansion and trade. Trade was very important to spread items, ideas, and religions. Cultures set up their own communities for trade, such as the Muslim in the Indian Ocean region, Chinese in Southeast Asia, the Sogdians throughout Central Asia, Jews in the Mediterranean and Indian Ocean, and along the Silk Roads. Influential travelers are wanted, such as Ibn Battuta, Marco Polo, and Zhu Zeng. Literary, artistic, and cultural diffusions include Neo-Confucianism and Buddhism in East Asia, Buddhism and Hinduism in Southeast Asia, Islam in Africa and Southeast Asia, Toltec and Mexica and Inca in the Mesoamerican and Andean American regions. These include Gothic churches, universities, and the Great Western Schism. Scientific and technological diffusion include Greek and Indian math on Muslim scholars, return of Greek science and philosophy to Western Europe by Muslims in Iberia, and the spread of printing and gunpowder from East Asia in Islamic Europe and Western Europe. Many technological items include the water wheel, the printing press, and the caravel. More questions. What were the biological effects of post-classical trade? Well, there was a continued diffusion of crops and pathogens throughout the Eastern Hemisphere along trade routes. Bananas in Africa, new rice in East Asia, the Muslim agricultural revolution were all beneficial, while the spread of epidemic disease such as the Black Death, which by trade and military conquest was very harmful. Famines were also an example of the harmful diffusion throughout the Eastern Hemisphere. Thanks for watching. Good luck.
Hello. I didn't see you there.
No, you did. I told you we were recording.
Camera people will be seen and not heard, okay? Before we were so rudely interrupted, welcome to NN News, where I'll tell you about some current news. If you were born, 1,000 years ago. Can we talk about China? They were a hot mess until this time period. That was until, of course, the Sui Empire took over and finally unified China. In this new empire, Buddhism was the main religion. Basically, everyone was Buddhist, except for, the Mongols. Just kidding. It was the government. They were based on Confucianism. Towards the money side of things, most of the country's funds went towards irrigation projects, the military, and construction. Now we need to move on and talk about the Tang Empire. The Tang combined traditions of the Turkic and the Chinese. There was absolutely, positively no over-centralization. And they were huge on, guess what? Territorial expansion. Buddhism was here too. They used Buddhism as validation for the king's rule, and monasteries were given special tax exemptions. Chang'an, the capital city, had a huge population, over 1 million people, while present-day China is barely scraping by with 1.357 billion people. Back to Chang'an, majority of that population lived outside of the city. There were special compounds for foreigners, and of course, the wealthy, they were wealthy, had these nice homes inside the city walls. Trade was common throughout the Tang Empire. They had merchants from Western Asia. They exported wine and tea. Enough about the Tang. Let's move on to the Uyghur Empire. They were known for their scribes and merchants, who had connections with Islam in China. What year did Islam begin? The Tibetan were huge, and they were able to interact with the Qing, Southeast, South, and Central Asia. They were friends with the Tang, but that changed by the 600s. Buddhism is still trying to be dominant, but a Tibetan king went as far to try to diminish it, and Confucian dominance was restored. There was a bunch of new states. There were the nomadic Liao, whose leaders ranged from Confucian to nomadic with a mix of Buddhism, and they had a strong military. Then we have the Song, who partnered up with the Jurchens to take down the Lao. There was an advancement in technology such as the mechanic clock, a new compass, and good old movable type. The military was strong, and they had gunpowder weapons. The civil service examination was now a thing in the Song Empire. It was introduced by the Tang. There was more population growth, flying money, which caused inflation. Now onto the deterioration of women's rights. It was, of course, a patriarchal society, and my favorite of all, foot binding. Women lost all their rights for marriage and property. Off with the heavy, and now bring in the easy breezy. The Americas with human sacrifice. Tehuacan was a Mesoamerica city. Religion was dominant. Agriculture was huge. They lived in stone homes that looked like condos. And of course, the wealthy had better housing. The wealthy controlled nearly everything to do with the government, including tax. The government was not ruled by a king, but by rich families. Now to Tatu Picchu Thompson in Central America to talk about the Maya. Just kidding, we couldn't afford the plane ticket, so she's in my front yard.
Machu Picchu Thompson here in beautiful Central America. Now let's talk about the Maya. There was a lot of internal fighting within the Maya. And as usual, they were big on agriculture. They had a belief system which involved the cosmos. The three layers were the heavens, the human world, and the underworld. Unlike the Song women, Mayan women had religious importance in ceremonies. We cannot forget the new technology such as the writing system, mathematics, and the infamous calendar that caused a numerous amount of people to sell their worldly possessions because the world was ending. The Toltecs were inspired by Teotihuacan, and the Toltecs had a capital at Tula. The Aztecs had famous cities of Tenochtitlan and Tlatelolco. There was a monarchy, and they used conquest to bring money to their rulers. Their trade had no useful technology. The religion of the Aztecs is best known for human sacrifice and their numerous gods. The Anasazi had underground buildings and an economy based off rice, beans, and corn. Mound builders, the Mississippian culture. The chiefs were priests who were in charge of long-distance trade. Those infamous mounds were used as burial sites. Andean civilizations had labor systems that were in clans that were used that used the mita system, which was obligation service. Like the Andean civilizations, the Moche used the mita, and peasants worked for the wealthy. We also see a rise in art that was metallurgy, textiles, and copper weapons. Tiwanaku in Bolivia had an important crop of potatoes. They had a lot of construction going on. They built temples with terraces. The Wari had some interactions with the Tonku, but they were much smaller. And lastly, the Inca in Cusco. There was a chiefdom which became larger. They used military expansion and the mita. Unlike some other civilizations, the Inca allowed their local rulers they had conquered to remain in power. They also had an imperial bureaucracy. And now to